Hi, I'm Steve Gillmor, and this is our fly. Damn it. This is the Gillmor Gang, plus airborne insects, for a Friday in, what month are we in? July. That's great. Okay, welcome to, starting straight ahead of me here, Robert Scoble. Welcome, Robert.
What's up?
How are you?
Pretty good. I just came back from interviewing the head of Wildfire Interactive at Google. So,
okay, well,
run.
Is this a car thing?
No, Wildfire Interactive was a company aimed at helping companies with their Facebook pages and promotions.
Okay.
And whoever's typing, knock that off.
It's Kevin.
He's taking notes for his next startup from everything you say, Robert. It's bound to be a success.
That's Keith Teare. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you.
And the now stopped typing Kevin Marks. Welcome, Kevin. Oh, you're muted, of course.
I muted myself because Robert was complaining.
I know why you did it.
I thought he was doing a Charlie Chaplin impression. It was pretty good.
Okay.
As in the new Google ChromeCast advert, yeah.
So we've got exciting news that we'll be talking about, I hope, from, of all places, Google. As Kevin Marks has been saying on Twitter, he's been predicting this for months, so we'll have to hear what that means. But Robert Scoble, I think your tweet was the first time that I saw that something was going on. What did Google do?
They announced the ChromeCast, which is a little key that plugs into your HDMI port on a big screen TV and gives you some of the features that AirPlay gives you. It does it in a different way than AirPlay. AirPlay, by the way, is the protocol where you click play on your iPhone to play something on your Apple TV that gets displayed on your big screen TV. And this new ChromeCast is a key that's $35. Apple TV's $100 or $99. And it lets you forward YouTube to that device. It does it differently, though. It sends something similar to a URL to the device, and then it pulls it down or starts streaming it directly off the web. So the phone at that point isn't involved. What that means is, one, it should be more reliable because it's going directly off the web, but it doesn't support things like Hulu because Google needs to make agreements with each of the services that we would want to share video from to make this all work out.
Yeah, but I mean, Apple has had to make those agreements. I mean, what else?
Absolutely. A year ago, Hulu didn't work on Apple TV, and today it does. Right now, Netflix works, and The Verge had a whole comparison of all the services that work on ChromeCast versus Apple TV, and that was pretty helpful. I'll put that in the chat room if I can find it.
So, Kevin Marks, what were you predicting?
Predicting something like this. I think it's fairly close to what I was saying about using web standards to move video around. So what they've done is they've put the browser on this little gadget that plugs into the TV. But if you read the docs for how the protocol works, it is basically it's playback pull rather than controlling device push, which is it's how some of Apple TV works, but it's not how the AirPlay mirroring stuff works. And what it reminds me of in some respects is the stuff that iTunes originally did years ago when I was at Apple, where you can the devices would pull from the nearby machines, and the machines would act as servers, but it also pulls over the internet. So it'll in order for you to put stuff up onto this, you effectively need a web server for this content on it, which means if you want to play stuff off your device, you have to run a local web server, which isn't hard. That's a small piece of code, and I'm sure that'll show up soon. But what it means at the moment is what you can't do is screen sharing, though I suspect that will come, and But what you can do is send a web page to it or send media to it.
Is that even true from Android, Kevin? Can you put the Android desktop on it?
I don't think you can do that yet. No.
Okay.
It's Chrome focused, so you can send from Chrome, and I'm not sure that the Android version of Chrome is caught up yet. But I haven't seen that. But what you can do is you can do the YouTube thing. You can send it a URL and it'll interpret it.
So you can probably, if you've got a Chromebook, you can probably send that desktop to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that takes care of about 20 people.
Yeah.
But if you've got anything running Chrome, you can do that. So that takes care of a lot more people. Like, 40% of web browser users or whatever it is.
But
it's interesting that Google has another project internally, which is whatever the next rev of Google TV is. And they've been very clear that this is not an alternative to that path. They see them as both existing in the world, a little bit like they say that Chrome OS and Android can coexist. They're saying this can coexist with an actual physical device, whether that's built in and embedded or not, called Google TV, that they still plan to go forward with.
I'm slightly wary of that. I don't think Google TV has been a big success. I suspect it's got fewer users than Google Reader had, for example. And my sense is they're going to keep that going as long as they can talk hardware people into making them. But I suspect that the challenges they've had there, where they're trying to actually take over the functions of the TV box completely and sit in between it and the TV and give you search across everything, that was more ambitious and also more failure prone than this, which is fairly straightforward and clear device in what it's doing.
Yeah, I think this device serves some of the use cases that AirPlay serves. Not all of them by any means, and not probably as elegantly as AirPlay does. It's interesting to me that they don't just implement AirPlay, because Apple did make it open standard.
No, they didn't.
Well, they at least made it available for licensing without...
That's very different.
But without implying a cost.
No, but with implying a TOS.
Probably a TOS, yeah.
Yeah, you've basically got to sign a contract with this. It's like licensing the iPod connector. You've got to say that you'll abide by Apple's ability to decide what you do with it.
Yeah.
But also this is AirPlay. This is kind of cleaner in that the device is doing the pulling. AirPlay ties up both devices while you're using it, which is less satisfactory, and is less efficient over the network. And a lot of that, I mean, the original version of DAAP that was the protocol that iTunes used was like this, and Apple had to change it under pressure from the record labels because they didn't like the idea of people being able to stream music from anywhere. So the protocols that AirPlay uses now is fairly complicated and basically re-encodes everything and sends it over the wire. Whereas this is saying pull it in the original format. Now you can still encode stuff and send it over the wire. There's a Chrome plugin that does that. But if you actually want to play stuff from the source, this is better. And also, it's simpler than Apple TV. Apple TV has several different modes going on. It has its own UI. It has its own remote control. You can use it without any device at all. They've gone the other way with this and said, no, everyone has a phone or a tablet or something or a computer, and you can remote control it from any of those, and we won't bother trying to make it a standalone device that you can control from remote control and have its own UX. So that's a simplifying choice. So it's taking a piece of what Apple TV does and making that a standalone device.
Boxy made a device that physically looked like this. It was an HDMI connector as small as this, but of course it was an attempt to replicate pretty much Apple TV.
Right.
And it had all the channels built in and everything, and it didn't really work. So it was more expensive than this, if I remember rightly. It was more close to $100.
Yeah, now we're going to hear, this is if Danny Sullivan was on today, which he was going to be, but won't be for several weeks, which will give him time to be able to develop the Roku history into something important. He'd be talking about Roku right now. So thanks for the role Danny Sullivan's played today by Keith Teare.
Well, he did live in England for a while, so he's an honorary Englishman.
Yeah, but let's get serious about this. I mean, we're for the 20th show in a row, we're not mentioning Microsoft until we start beating up on them. But the three players really are Microsoft, Google, and Apple, correct? Robert?
Yeah. Facebook, Amazon. Yeah.
But not in the TV realm in the same way. Amazon. Well, I suppose Amazon has a play in that they're selling the Kindles that do video. So their bet is on you'll watch it on that, which is a reasonably plausible bet, and you can watch it on computers.
By the
But
way,
they haven't tried to go for the TV.
Does Chromecast work with the Kindle Fire? I haven't seen anybody talk about that.
Good question. I have to try it.
I
It's
would
got a
imagine
browser
that
on it,
it
so
will
you can-
once they support the Google Cast or whatever
So there's different bits of it. One is you have a web page that controls it and you send things to it. So if you're browsing an enabled page or you have the plugin, you click that and it can send to it. So if you're browsing YouTube on the Kindle Fire and it's using the browser, not the app, then you should be able to send that to it, for example, if they've been enabled, because that's just a button on a web page that's rendered by the web page.
But they're not going to be too excited about that because they're competing against Google Play, and why would they want to do that?
The way I think about it is mass market versus geek market. And I just bought a new Vizio TV because I moved house, and for various reasons it made sense to buy a new TV. The first thing is they're really cheap now. I got a very high-end 60-inch 3D 240 hertz Vizio for about $1,200.
3D?
I don't use it, but it's got
the
it.
last one made, I think.
Probably, yeah, but whatever. But it was $1,200.
No, that's not true.
It's got an app store.
Manufacturers are giving up on 3D.
Well, they're giving up and trying to charge you a premium for it. It's just built in now.
I didn't mean to say 3D. Don't go down that alley. but
It was an easy thing. I could destabilize your meme by talking irrelevantly about 3D. It's going very well so far.
Only people of our generation understand how much fun it is to destabilize memes.
Well, when there's an app for it, then the next generation will understand.
But my main point was going to be this. That TV has a whole app store built in. The things like Netflix or streaming Amazon or Hulu Plus and all of that are kind of built in by default. So anything that comes along that is about getting stuff onto your TV has to be significantly better than what's already on the TV anyway. And you just wonder what's left, there from the existing services. The only thing that could be left is something highly disruptive to do with the existing TV, satellite, and cable ecosystem. That kind of gets me to mass market thinking. But anything else feels like I want one, but I don't know if anyone else is going to buy one.
I don't know. I think this Google thing is going to be hugely profitable in every way. I mean, it's going to be a long time, and it'll be interesting to see how they integrate it with their other failed TV architectures. But eventually, this is going to be a substantial offering.
Yeah.
I mean, $35. Come on.
Yeah, no, I bought 3.
Really? Well, you have to, right?
But the world's biggest TV guys, Samsung and LG, and probably Vizio if you had a third one, are not going to give up easily. Consumers being persuaded that in order to have stuff, they have to plug in something into their HDMI. When they're really trying to build their own stacks. And for normal people, that's a lot easier to understand than something else plugged in and linking to your Chrome or your Android.
I don't know. I think normal people struggle to get their TVs to do all these fancy things with the shitty remote controls they come with. And I suspect that this is actually plays to the natural thing of I am already holding my phone or my tablet or my computer, and I can use that to control it. I think that will be attractive, particularly as some were saying the younger people tend to prefer to watch stuff on the computers anyway, rather than wonder why you would watch it on the big TV.
Yeah, but our head of Gillmor Labs, our 12-year-old daughter, I walk into the living room and it's on ABC because they're watching How to Become a Millionaire or How to Not Become a Millionaire, which is more like it. I walk out of the room for 30 seconds. I come back in, and what was that show? That's How Do I Love? Yeah, How I Met Your Mother is on, and I knew that this, does that come on at noon? No. So I ask her what's going on. She's on Netflix.
Mm.
I mean, Netflix is their network. They don't care about
absolutely.
ABC, CBS, NBC. They literally don't care.
No, absolutely. But that's the point. So this is this fits in with that. They're dealing with Netflix and bundling Netflix with it makes perfect sense, and for both parties, it makes a lot of sense for Netflix and for Google. Seems like a very natural thing to do.
So, Robert, is this going to be a huge success?
It already is. Based on my watching on Twitter, they already turned off the Netflix 3 months for free because it was too popular. $35 is a killer price point. I'm like Kevin. I'm buying them for all my friends. Great birthday party gifts.
Okay, so what?
I'm buying them for all my TVs.
Right, we all are. But
that's two right there for me.
Once that happens, though, what's next? I mean, I've already seen these horror story updates about how when they try and do something.
What's interesting about the
show
architecture
2 minutes later and stuff like that. What's that?
What's interesting about the architecture that they chose is because they're going from the server. Now I can control my house and my TVs from Google Glass, so I could say, "Hey, OK Glass, Chromecast, XYZ show, House of Cards," and put it on my TV, my downstairs TV. And that scenario is enabled by Chromecast. Apple AirPlay, because it's trying to play from the device and stream over to the AirPlay, it's going to be much harder to do that, because now you have to figure out how to find a phone that it's going to stream off of, or another device that it's going to
I'm not
stream
sure
off
I
of.
agree with that. I mean,
in the
current incarnation, sure, but they are coming out with iOS 7 in a month, 2 months. That's number one.
Right. Does
AirPlay
iOS 7
is
change Apple
improved.
TV's AirPlay feature to go directly from the YouTube servers and not from the device itself?
Well,
I think
Apple TV can do that, but it does it differently, right? So Apple TV, you have to navigate to the YouTube thing, click YouTube, and then do it on there. And you can search on, you can type the search in on your
right. But I'm
gadget.
talking about something on the phone where you click play,
right.
Or in this case, Chromecast. And in the Apple TV world or the AirPlay world, you click that little icon that has a little play button, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that the rocket scientists at Apple are going to be able to figure out over the next couple of weeks how to be able to switch from Apple TV in the bedroom to the downstairs via this thing called software over Wi-Fi. I mean, come on. This is not hard coding.
You're misunderstanding me. With wearable computers like your new iWatch that's going to come out, or this, the battery is too small to do anything like streaming live video from this device to something else. So the fact that this Chromecast works off of the server is interesting to me, because now I can talk to the glass and say play YouTube, play House of Cards on Netflix, and it automatically starts playing, but it's not involving the Google Glass other than to make that initial command.
Yeah, now I understand that how this has been implemented by Google and how the current Apple TV works, but as I think Kevin pointed out, Apple TV does a number of different things, several of which could be adopted to emulate this strategy.
Fair enough.
It does open up what I always call two streams in the cloud, two screens in the cloud, and once you offload the streaming to the cloud and the big screen, the second screen in your hand can be used for related content a lot easier. Apple already does do that, Kevin. I mean, there's a lot of apps now that are clever enough to do AirPlay streaming in the background and give you the front screen. So Apple does it as well. I do think that actually there's a benefit in general to content owners that both Apple and Google are playing to and will mutually reinforce. And this is an area where their competition is, in a way, wonderful, which is it really opens up a much wider channel for what I call over-the-top content that doesn't go through the traditional distribution channels of either the networks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean, we've been talking about this now sort of obliquely for a long time, and surprise, all of a sudden we actually have a competitive race here. And I think I agree. Not only do I agree with Keith, I go a step further and say that this is probably going to be enormously helpful for Apple in terms of what they plan to do, because they're in terms of content distribution, they're further ahead than their competitors right now, including Amazon, and it's going to come back to be very valuable for them as they start to make whatever this move to television is going to be this fall. Go ahead, Robert.
So you know, last week we sort of beat up on Microsoft, and I think this week it's gonna get even worse, and next week it's gonna get worse again for Microsoft. This is $35. It's again the Google and Apple ecosystems that we love to argue are beating up on each other, but what they're really doing is beating up on everybody else, and have been for 6 years. And I you know, if you're a family that's struggling to make ends meet, are you going to buy a Xbox One this fall that's $500, and plus you're going to need 3 or 4 video games, so that's $700 plus tax? Or are you going to buy a Chrome key for $35 for Christmas, or an Apple TV for $100? You know, unless you have a teenager in the house who's really going to bother the crap out of you to buy an Xbox for gaming, I don't get it. You know, Microsoft, to me, looks like it's going to lose the living room to either Apple or Google, and we could argue whether it's going to be Google or Apple or both. But
well, I think that's accurate. They are going to lose them and have lost them so far to both.
Yeah, because they lost the mobile world. You know, it all springs to losing the mobile world, and we're going to talk about that next week after the Moto X phone comes out. But because they lost the mobile world, it just makes it very difficult for them to do something like this. Because what do you know, who are they going to support? Are they going to support Chromecast, or are they going to support Apple AirPlay? They're not very willing to do that inside Microsoft. It's not a really great suggestion to take to Ballmer to go, hey, we should build a TV device that's really low cost, that might compete with the Xbox, but you know, not with games. Although, you know, AirPlay is doing a lot of gaming. A lot of games now support AirPlay to be a second screen to your iPhones. You know, if you want to play Scrabble or something, you can do a lot of things with that AirPlay screen. Man, I don't get what Microsoft's going to do to stop this bleeding, and I think that's going to be a trend for a long time. You know, the Xbox is so expensive. I just don't know how many families are going to buy that thing.
Well, you could argue, Robert, that in a way Microsoft never really owned the living room, and they tried with Media Center, and then they tried with Xbox, and they got into the living room, but owning the living room and getting into it are not the same thing. And there's a sociological problem here, which is a room that has more than one person in who share a screen. Inevitably, it's a lean-back experience, because social interaction ends up being disruptive to one of the 2 people or one of the 5 people. So you've got to push off that content to a second screen so that you can share the big screen. And the only real exception to that is things which are collaborative, like games, where everybody's playing at the same time. But if you're watching something, you don't want someone interoperating with the screen. You just want to watch it, and you need interoperation elsewhere.
You know, I've been feeling this for a while, and I'm starting to think that actually it's correct, which is I think second screen is going away. I don't really think that second screen is anything more than us attempting to do what we want to do with a single screen. In other words, our focus of attention is around a single screen, no matter where we are. And I think that's why the iPad Mini has been so successful, is because it becomes an omnibus screen for you that you use an increasingly large percentage of the time. I think that's why Google Glass is going to be successful, is that it's essentially it becomes your screen in terms of the first interaction with incoming information. And I think push notifications at the top, or rotating through a single screen environment, is the way that we actually prefer once the filtering works and the integration of multiple strategies like the one that we're seeing with ChromeCast.
But my point, Steve, is that that's true as long as there's only one viewer. But the minute there's two or more viewers, you almost have to separate the stream from the data stream from the picture. I mean, when I sit down with Jenny, my wife, at night, we watch a movie or something on Netflix. She'd be pretty pissed off if things started to happen on the screen that we're watching that I was triggering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So this is the first screen. The TV becomes the second screen. That's basically what's happening. The second screen notion with always, you're doing something while you're watching your first screen, the TV, and actually the TV is the second screen or the third screen. It's like, okay, I've got this, I've got the laptop, the TV, yeah, okay, that's okay, my third choice.
I think that's fair, but I think that what we're really seeing here with all of these different so-called TV strategies is the battle to get enough momentum and market share to be able to influence the outcome of the aggregation model that's going to result when all of these things work together. And they will work together, I think, because most of the information that we are trying to monitor can be shifted to like these wearable devices.
Yeah.
Like the watch, for example.
Yeah.
If that way, you've correctly put it as that the second screen is really the television. I think that is the transition that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think we have a consensus there.
But that means that it's not the second screen; it's the first screen. There's only one screen. Looking at my watch because I'm getting an alert, or even just an audio alert or a vibration alert, is going to become all the more important.
Yes, I agree with that too.
Okay, so I'm not looking at two screens at once. It's like multitasking. It's a figment of, time slicing imagination.
But I think the other thing, which we all probably know, but it's worth saying, is I think there are two screens, but there are not three. Microsoft used to call it 3 screens in the cloud, and the third screen was the laptop or the desktop.
No, it was their diminishing value proposition.
Right.
That was the third screen.
I think the laptop or the desktop are gone. I also think, I met with this company this week called XTV. They have a platform that runs out of the Nest Labs in Redwood City, Nest GSP. And XTV is basically a network platform. So let's say, Steve, you wanted to put Gillmor Gang, and let's say you wanted to cherry pick 5 of the TechCrunch shows. They would host, transcode, and build a schedule to create a kind of an on-demand TV network for you. And right now they don't have distribution, so they have to distribute a client. In this Chromecast Apple TV world, Chromecast is going to be more open than Apple TV. It's going to be hard for him to get an Apple TV. With Chromecast, all he really has to do is build a plug-in to Chromecast, and now you've got.
Oh, please, come on.
So no, it's going to be more open because it will actually be able to play on anything running Chrome. That's the other piece. If you read the SDK, it says, oh, you can create a receiver app, and then you can run that on anything running Chrome, which means
I
you can create a receiver app running on your Mac, running on your phone, running on your tablets, and so on in time as well.
I reject the argument that Open has some sort of magic capability.
No, I
that
mean,
distinguishes it from actually working in a way that is
actually
intuitive.
Working is
I mean
important.
it in a different way than Kevin. I mean from a content owner's point of view. You know, if we wanted to put Gillmor Gang on Apple TV other than as a podcast, we'd have to go and do a deal with Apple. If we wanted to put it on Chromecast, I think
that's not true. All we have to do is do it what we're doing, which is I'm not announcing this yet, but I mean we're definitely going to YouTube streaming at some point.
Yeah, but you still would have to.
That's on Apple TV.
It is.
I can show you where it is. It's great. Works
actually, I get it on Apple TV today, so I don't mean that literally. I get it on Apple TV today via the podcast part of Apple TV. So I can already get it on Apple TV, but I don't mean that. I mean to put it on the front screen as one of those slates that you can choose that everyone sees.
Yeah, but I mean that's an economic model that isn't matched to. I mean, either there's this new thesis about the emergence, which you talked about before, of other types of content or broadening of options in terms of available content that would include things that don't necessarily have the whole windowing, Thanksgiving to Christmas or summer blockbuster release kind of cartel economics behind it. If that's true, which I think that it's marginally true, I think there are more options and alternatives for getting this kind of distribution. But getting a little chiclet on the front of any of these platform plays is
going to be expensive.
It's not going to have the kind of effect. I mean, look at Netflix. Netflix has, I think, to Kevin's point, Netflix, because of its proliferation across all devices. You know, your refrigerator has Netflix at this point. Means that if you can get on that, like House of Cards did, and you can get enough visibility that HBO starts complaining that you're talking about this little puny thing called House of Cards, which they don't even have any metrics or data for how successful it is. The very fact that all these things are nominated for Emmy Awards means that they are incredibly succeful.
Yeah.
So there's a different route to be able to get visible. I mean, that's what happened with TechCrunch. Who was this lawyer, who suddenly became canonical because he knew what he was talking about, and he said it in an aggressive and entertaining way, and that cuts through all these other models.
I agree, but I think there's another dimension to this. Look at what Robert does with Flipboard with his magazines. Now imagine that curation applied to independent video, either live or recorded or on demand. And up until now, there wasn't really the good platforms for Robert to want to put the effort into video, and neither was there sufficient content to make it compelling enough to sit down in an evening and watch that as opposed to House of Cards or whatever. I think that might change.
I totally agree with that. I mean, what we're seeing here is, I think Mike Vizard, who used to be on the show a lot back when it was a podcast, he said that, and he's not the only one to say this, that markets are 2 or more companies. You have to have at least 2, and preferably 3. The economics for the third player are dreadful, so it's not something to be looking for, is to be number 3 in a two company market. But we now have 2 companies in this market with the advent of ChromeCast. That's why it's just extraordinarily important. But as I said before, I think it's probably a net huge win for Apple that Google has come in with something that actually is credible. Thoughts?
I don't know that it affects Apple because Apple was happening anyways, and we've covered that for months.
But we keep talking about, well, gee, what will happen when AirPlay becomes successful? We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about, gee, what happens when, as Keith opened the show with, all of a sudden there's this, the balance of power from HDMI 1 to HDMI 2 and 3 has just shifted.
Yeah.
HDMI junction boxes are going to become a standard item as people realize that they have to be able to do this. And then a controller, which I think is what the implication of ChromeCast is, and certainly what Apple is going to try and do, a controller which blends all these signals together under software control. That's what we want.
Yeah. Now, this makes my bet on Android for phone a lot more interesting because I can see now a path that I'll have the same ecosystem that Apple has. One of the major things I really missed on my iPhone was AirPlay. And this new Chromecast gives me a way to get out of that lock-in. But I see it as far more interesting as to, it's just firming up the ecosystems that are being built around Android or Chrome or whatever you call Google's ecosystem, and Apple's ecosystem, and it really makes the other ecosystems or other phone partners just seem more lame, and that's going to be a trend this week, last week, and next week.
Whose ecosystem is more lame?
Microsoft and BlackBerry.
Oh, okay.
I don't see how they are going to be a serious player anymore, and that's my belief for that is getting stronger and stronger. And I didn't even know about Chromecast coming out, but this makes it even stronger. That we live in an Apple and a Google world. They're going to have different attributes. But I don't see how Microsoft comes in. I don't see why you would buy a Microsoft phone right now, other than it has a great camera, and that's just simply not enough to make an ecosystem around. If it was, Nokia would still be here because Nokia had better cameras than the iPhone had.
I don't know if I understand what the Google strategy is about tablets and Chromecast. It seems to me that.
Well, other than they have
the
a
new
$200
Nexus 7
tablet.
is like looks like it's not going to be hugely viral.
No, it's a nice upgrade. It's full 1080p. The price is still around the same. It's a nice machine. I can see that's put a marker down for Apple to compete with, and I think the thing is, as you say, that will be a very good single screen because it's 1080p and you can hold it here, so that will replace a TV. So that's and it's got LTE integration, which means you can then use that as your first screen if you like. So that in all those terms, I think the Nexus 7 upgrade makes sense, and we'd probably be talking about that if they hadn't thrown the Chromecast in as a one more thing to distract us. I think they've made a solid move with that as well.
Well, I see it pretty much the opposite way, which is that I don't think it's that Chromecast is a one more thing. I think that is the thing, and the normal cost of doing business in the tablet and phone environment is to keep coming up with upgrades.
Sure, but as you say, the tablet is the first screen. That is a very nice first screen. It's a nice crisp 1080p screen, so
Did you buy it?
It's not available for purchase yet, so I'll buy it as soon as it is. Yeah.
According to one of these, I think TechMeme says that it's available at Best Buy and
maybe that's at Best Buy earlier. I was looking at.
They've sold out. They've sold out. It was only available for in-store pickup, and they've sold out.
Ah, okay.
You can get it for 4 weeks if you go to Google Play Store.
Yeah.
It was actually out for sale now on Play Store, is it? Because when I looked yesterday, it wasn't.
Steve, I think you're keying in on too tight of a product category. if you, when I visited Google, they were very open about how many potholes their ecosystem has in it, and they're filling in the potholes. And so if you look at the tablet as a pothole, as a thing where the ecosystem isn't very strong, they're filling in the pothole. They're keeping that ecosystem up to date and keeping Microsoft out of the market, or they're keeping Microsoft from being strong in the market because it's a $200 tablet, and everybody says, oh, the Windows 8 tablets are pretty nice, but those are all $1,000 tablets, and most people don't need a $1,000 tablet that runs Excel. Most people just want to do Facebook and email. I watch how my wife works now, and she's now working as a conference planner. She uses email, Facebook, and Google Docs, and that's all she uses.
Same as my wife. My wife.
So she doesn't need a $1,000 tablet that runs Excel or Office, and so Google, by keeping a low price point of $200, is keeping pressure on the other people who might want to get into the market, into this new way of living, And
Right.
the new way of living is an ecosystem play. It's not just buying a phone, and it's not just buying a tablet, it's not just buying a TV anymore. It's those three things together, and soon wearables are going to enter into it. And the ecosystems that you choose are going to, either be Apple or Google at this point. I don't see how anybody can build an ecosystem that's going to be interesting to anybody who listens to the Gillmor Gang.
What?
I don't see how anybody
right
can
with you until
compete
that
with
last
Apple
sentence.
or Google in the ecosystem world, for the user who listens to the Gillmor Gang. Now, maybe they can convince me somebody else will buy something else. But for the Gillmor Gang viewer, who is typically in the Western world and is willing to buy best of breed or close to best of breed, I don't see why anybody listening to the show will go and buy anything but a Google or an Apple product for a while.
Well, I think that it's the other way around. I think we follow what we're interested, at least I am. I'm interested in very mainstream things. I mean, I watch my daughter and see what she does, and I watch my other daughter who's 19 or 20 and see what she does.
Right, but
that's
we're
what's interesting to
mainstream
me.
in San Francisco. If you go to Spain right now,
But it's like saying that when the Beatles came out, there was a small pocket. When
Hear
the
me out
Fireside
here.
Theater started breaking out in Boston and
Right.
underground radio, it was a minority. And the next year, it was underground radio, or it was whatever the FM was called in those days. I
Right,
mean, these
but
things
people-
are explosively growing.
people make a claim that in the third world or developing world that BlackBerry might have a chance, I just had spent the weekend with a Telefonica executive, and he said in Spain the Firefox OS phones are white hot, are selling like hotcakes, and that shows that yes, there are different markets from the Gillmor Gang audience, because those people are not watching the Gillmor Gang. They're people who are very, very price constrained, and they don't care about having the latest apps or the latest AirPlay feature or whatnot.
No, I don't agree. They do care about it. They just have not been served by a vendor that can supply those things. That's for the same or a similar price. That's what I find interesting about the Nexus 7 is that they, as Kevin said, they are constraining the price to the point, $29 more than last year or 2 years ago. I mean, the cost of inflation, that's essentially the same price. So, they are paying attention to this, and they're doing a pretty good job. But that doesn't mean that they're doing, the biggest concern I would have about ChromeCast is this sort of discontinuity between the guy who's in charge of it is also the guy in charge of Google TV, which is a massive failure.
Well, this is clearly Google TV 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever you call it. This is
maybe,
you know,
but there are two different
learn a lot.
operating systems. You know, one's based on Android, the other's based on whatever the hell Chrome is.
I don't care about the operating system choices. I care about the price points and the, you know, I have a Nexus Q somewhere in my closet they tried to sell it for $300, and it was a heavy ball with amplifiers in it and all sorts of crap. And it's clear they learned from that failure, because that was a huge failure. That was even a bigger failure than Google TV. At least, you know, Keith, does your new Vizio TV have Google TV built in?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, really? They used to include Google TV inside their TV.
It's got Vizio's own platform, which is very different to Google TV.
But anyways, they probably are learning by that failure too, and they're people will buy a little key for $35 and plug it in to get new features, you know, and be free of the crap that Vizio tries to do. Because I like Vizio, and I have one sitting in front of me, but the software that they build is crap, and I really don't care about the UI that they build. It's not very nice, and I want to control it from my phone. And this is you know, the car is going to see the same revolution soon. I want to walk into my car or sit in my car, and my phone or my glass or my wearables, whatever's on me, should be controlling the car, not the other way around. And the car companies have just started making that strategic shift. They used to think, we're going to force you to use our navigation system in the car, and we're not going to talk to the phone. We're not going to think about the phone. We're not going to care about the ecosystem. But now the ecosystem's gotten so powerful that they have to switch their mind, their strategy to, we're going to put a screen in the car, but the screen is going to be controlled by your iPhone or whatever you walk into your car with. I think in 3 years we're going to see cars like that. The TV is going through the same learning process. I really don't care. Samsung keeps pushing this platform for the TV with apps, and I tell their executives every time they try to show it to me, I don't care. You are doing the wrong strategy. The strategy is put the crap on my phone to control the TV.
It's like the HP made that mistake. They put all kinds of crapware on the PCs, and
exactly.
Anyone sensible kind of reformatted the drive and started with a base system that had none of the crap on.
You know, Comcast is getting it. My Comcast app on my iPhone controls our DVR now. And certainly, if you have AirPlay, you understand how key the phone is as a remote to control the Apple TV, and as a driver of content from the phone, where I start watching a YouTube video. It's a really funny video. I want to show it to my wife. Why would I hand her the phone? No,
you've got to check out, Robert, you've got to check out XTV. On XTV, what happens is there's a QR code on any TV screen. It doesn't matter what it is. You take a picture of the QR code with your phone. Now your phone is the remote control for that TV.
Interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so I see this as a really great shift. I don't, I'm going to repeat myself, so I won't anymore.
No, I think you're spot on about the car. My wife just got a new car, and the config that I had to do to actually make it talk to anything was so enormously painful, and creating accounts on 6 different services. Eventually, it was like, okay, I don't care anymore about this. I'm just going to send sound from my phone to you and not bother using your speech integration and so on. And we got all this. We've got 3 screens attached to the car that are basically not very useful, because we don't have any control over them from the device. So that's exactly right. And they put an entire UI on there that presumes that the car is the center of the universe and doesn't work very well at all. So yeah.
Which car manufacturer is that, Kevin?
That's Acura.
Wow.
They're all the same.
They're all the same at the moment. What they're showing, they're clearly starting to realize this, but their production cycle is 3 to 5 years. So they'll get this soon.
Well, Tesla is showing the way out of this, because Tesla turned the car into an API. They have a huge ass beautiful screen right in the dash. In fact, there's 2 screens in the dash. The speedometer is actually a digital display that you can control from digital devices, and they have this big thing that looks like an iPad and sort of works like an iPad, but it's a display surface that's all API'd. So, on my show, I had a 20-year-old kid. Yeah, and I know Tesla's too expensive for you, Tina, but they're working on a $40,000 one. But they're showing the industry how to do it. And this kid built a glass app to control his car. He can talk to the glass and get the moonroof to open, or he can talk to the glass and find out where the car is because the car has GPS in it, or he could talk to the glass and see how much battery life he has left in it, and on and on and on. That sounds sort of geeky, but that's the way the car should work. That when I walk into the car with a phone or a glass or a watch or whatever, that the car serves me and my already existing behaviors and devices. Tesla's there, or very close to being there. The other car companies need to learn from Tesla and API their systems so that we can control their systems and not be locked into their systems.
Wow.
And TV's the same way, right? If Samsung just said we're going to give you a screen and we're going to turn it into an API, and then developers are going to have to figure out what to do with it, that would sort of be interesting. But to build a whole platform and a whole OS into the TV that's different than the OS on my phone, and then to not have a strategy of how to get apps that onto the phone that support the Samsung TV is just stupid. It's mind-blowing stupid. But that's what happens when you have executives who don't live in Silicon Valley and they think that they own the world.
Well, they want to be Apple. Samsung wants to be Apple. They want to have all the
and they make a lot of stupid mistakes that are going to cost them, you know?
Yep. I agree with that.
It doesn't cost them right now.
I'm not sure about how these are mistakes as much as that they don't have the ability to be able to do things that would save them. I mean, I think that's Microsoft's problem. It's not that they're stupid.
Right,
they're not stupid.
But even
they just
while
don't have the ability to be able to do it.
I disagree with you a little, Steve. The problem is they're so this new Samsung phone has features that watch my face, so I can read just by using my eyes and stuff like that. Great feature. But the problem,
how do you normally read?
the problem is that they did it half-assed, and it doesn't work very well, and it doesn't make me feel good about it. This is a mistake Apple never made. Steve Jobs always asked me to look at the back of a computer to see how holistic it was and how well thought out the whole product was. And he never asked me to look at just a specific feature and buy a product just for one feature.
I mean, that's exactly right. The thing about Apple that I think really sustains itself beyond Steve Jobs is, and who knows whether he invented it or the whole team invented it, is we don't want to waste our time on Earth reinventing solutions to problems that nobody realizes are constantly going to be in our face. In other words, we want thought about what this is going to be like once whatever this thing is becomes more ubiquitous. As it starts to gain momentum, what are the things that we're going to have to do over and over again, and how can those be mitigated? We want people to deliver products that are ahead of the curve, not reactive to the curve. And that's what Samsung's problem is that they're reacting.
Well, that's not quite true, because they're doing bleeding edge features that are ahead of the curve.
Bleeding edge is not what I'm talking about. I mean, that may be important for dreaming and some of the other things that we've talked about, but it's not that important for what people make bets long term. They make bets on their assumptions, their trust in companies or governments or institutions or whatever that they think are going to do a better job than the other guy. I mean, it's not that Obama is doing well, but he's doing better than the other guys that are doing worse.
I disagree with you about Samsung. They're aiming in the right places. the idea that you're going to use a face to control a phone is actually pretty mind-blowing when you see it done right.
Yeah, I'd like them to be able to detect that I'm getting really bored by this article, and would they please give me articles that I'm not going to be bored by? If they can capture that expression, they can make a lot of money.
Where it's really
I'll pay for it. Yeah, Tina knows what it looks like. Even
right.
with
Where
the back,
really
looking at the back of my head, she knows what it looks like.
Control of the OS and stuff like that. I saw a company out of Israel called UMove, which showed me the same phone running their software, and it works. The Samsung software doesn't work. And I asked him, why didn't Samsung buy you? And he said they were in a negotiation with Samsung, and Samsung decided to build it themselves, and they just don't understand the problem. This is a fundamental mistake Apple hasn't yet made, in that shipping a new feature isn't just about shipping a feature. It has to work, and the face detection doesn't work.
Not to be too, racist about this, but there's a Koreanness about Samsung's approach. If anyone's ever done business in Korea, the not invented here thing is very strong. There's a very strong nationalism, which is understandable because Korea had to emerge out of the Second World War and protect itself from foreign markets in order to even grow as a company, as a country. And so that nationalism is well-founded and rational and valid in many ways, but it leads to a blind spot when it comes to the outside. And
here's another example, Keith. And I wish I had pulled it up, but in the settings, there's a way to tell your device. Let me try to find it. Tell your device where it is. It's called location services. So here it is. It's called My Places. It's down here at the bottom. It's hard to find, first of all, so that tells you it's a poorly designed feature. But you can tell it how to sense you're at home or in your office or in your car by looking for things like your Wi-Fi radio at home. My Wi-Fi radio at home is named Scobleizer. No other Wi-Fi radio in the world is named Scobleizer. So when it senses that it's at the on the Scobleizer Wi-Fi network, it knows it's at home because that's the only place that the Scobleizer Wi-Fi network exists, right?
You realize right now, 1,000 people.
Yeah, I just changed our domain to say Scobleizer.
I can change mine too, okay? But when I sit in my car, my car has a unique Bluetooth signature that no other car in the world has. And in fact, I have two cars that have different Bluetooth signatures, so it knows I'm in my wife's car or in my
So when I pull up next to the house, then
really interesting stuff, because if you understand that you're in my car with your phone, now you can do stuff. You can make new kinds of apps that serve me while I'm driving, right? You can make the UI different, because while I'm driving, I don't want to see a lot of notifications. I don't want to be distracted, and I want to see a map, and that's it.
Now you're getting to what? You're getting to what? I don't know if you remember, but last week on the Gillmor Gang, I mentioned I'd just been to Cisco, and I talked about the concept of putting identifiers and the services they support in a database in the cloud. MAC addresses being an identifier, and the services, and that would allow exactly what you're describing, which is a device to bind to appropriate services depending on where it is.
Now, okay, so we have a new feature. Most people haven't even tried it because it's hidden down in the settings. But when you turn it on for the car, it turns on the Samsung Drive UI. And that UI is somewhat brilliant in that you talk to it, and it has really nice instructions on how to talk to it and navigate and make a phone call and stuff just by talking to it. And pretty well thought out there. But it hides my Waze app. And there's no way to unhide my Waze app. If I try to pull my Waze app up, the Samsung UI snaps to the front after about 10 seconds and hides the Waze app again. And it pisses me off. So what did I do? I unconnected it. This is the problem with Samsung. They don't make things that work and make you feel good. They do bring new features to bear, but Apple, when it brings a new feature, it always makes you feel good.
One of the most important
most,
features.
Most of the time, that makes
One of
sense.
the most important features of this ChromeCast rollout is the fact that it works with iOS.
Yeah.
To that point, you know, I mean, obviously Google is extremely competitive in terms of so much of this, but they continue to realize that, just like Apple hopefully realizes that, you know, when the iPhone shipped, Google Maps was the reason that it was successful. And now Google is starting to realize that if it can play and interoperate with iOS, they will be successful. So
right. By the way, Greg
good.
Kinnerman, I'm butchering his last name, is watching Gillmor Gang right now on his Chromecast using the Chromecast plugin on Chrome. And this is a good example. Google introduced a new product this week. It's already in somebody's hands. It didn't cost very much money, and it feels good. It works. The features that Samsung introduced on this new fancy phone don't make me feel good. They don't work. And somebody said, well, they sold a shitload of these phones. Yes, they sold 71 million smartphones because they have a beautiful screen and they have good processors and good battery life and a decent price. But they're trying to build a defensible ecosystem that they can then compete with Apple. They're not there even close. And by the way, next week we're going to talk a lot more about this when the Motorola X phone comes out, because I'm getting rid of my Samsung phone next Thursday, and I'm not going back to Samsung. And that's an exact reason why, because they can't build software, and a beautiful screen isn't enough anymore.
well, there you have it. Just Greg, who's watching on Chromecast, he says that it's not high res, but it's he can continue to work while he listens and watches the show.
But that's
it's the first screen.
But a footnote here to new tech. It could be high res if you gave Steve the latest new tech.
Well, there have been discussions. But thanks for the thought. It would be the Gillmor Gang giving New Tech the opportunity.
It would absolutely be that.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'd like to be able to do something I don't believe that the TriCaster yet does, which is to be able to control it remotely, so that when we're traveling, we can still do the show without having Tina have to sit here to run it.
So live stream have this amazing box with a handle on, like a suitcase, that does 4 cameras and streaming. Very like a new tech device, but it's a live stream device. It's pretty decent. It uses Black Magic Media SDI cards and converters to HDMI. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I think the lesson of Chromecast is that if you push it back to the cloud and off of the individual device, then all things become possible, or at least all things except for anything that the cartel owns.
So it makes me think that, Steve, you and Tina know it. I've been thinking about this thing now.tv for probably 3 years now, since I did TechRush TV for Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't done it because the costs of doing it are pretty high. To do it properly, it's probably about $10 million. And, it's like a CNN competitor, but internet only, which CNN, of course, can't do because of their cable and satellite contracts. And this makes me think it's getting closer to the time when you could do something like that, where you could do a proper, genuine, over-the-top content service, because the distribution will be there.
All right, well, let's bring this one in for a landing, hopefully with the rear wheels first, as opposed to the way it's been going recently. So, Robert, final thoughts?
Well, we haven't talked about Facebook's good earnings. We haven't talked about
Google's bad earnings.
Yeah, although
They weren't that bad.
they weren't that bad, and
Google's bad earnings?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they missed
Microsoft's terrible earnings.
their cost per click declined significantly, a lot.
we know that there's a transition in the marketplace away from desktop, away from laptop, away from screens to mobile devices and tablets. And Google is a couple quarters behind Facebook in its move to monetizing mobile. And it's a bigger company. It moves a little slower.
All right, well, we have to keep going for a minute then because Kevin's shaking his head. Why are you shaking your head, Kevin?
I don't think Google's behind Facebook on mobile. I think what Google's been doing on mobile has been
on monetizing.
absolutely brilliant. And they're playing a long game on monetizing.
Yep, I will agree with that. And I think that's why the stock market didn't punish Google very much.
Whereas Microsoft,
they did. It went down 5% on the day.
Yeah, that's not very much, dude.
But it came up again, didn't it?
It came up and then went back down again. But listen, I think there is a bigger problem. It isn't a long game. That's looking at it through rose-tinted spectacles. It's an absolute loss of traffic on the desktop that can't be monetized on mobile at the same rate.
Yeah.
And as mobile grows and the acceleration to mobile grows, there is the possibility, and it's only a possibility, of an absolute revenue decline for Google, not just a relative one.
Yeah,
that's true, but I think they're going to have to do some of the same stuff that Facebook had to do, which is put some ads into mobile. Most of the users liked it first, and now they're used to it.
Yeah, but what Facebook's done right, Robert, is they've done app installs as ads.
Yeah.
I spend money on it, and it's awesome because you're paying for an install, not for a click or an impression.
Yeah.
And you can set the rate you want to pay for an install, and they will get you the number of installs you can get for that rate. So it's very predictable. Facebook's done an awesome job of doing that, and in a quarter where 891 million people used Facebook on mobile, and 290 million only use mobile, that's got to be scary as hell for Google.
Yep. And it's going to get worse. Google, I think, is thinking about it in depth. I mean, the Google Glass project tells me that they're really thinking about a new world that is going to exist in 5 years. And they're not putting ads here. So they're signaling to the market that the ad game is not how Google is going to monetize long term.
I think Larry knows that. I do believe Larry knows that. But knowing it and figuring out what to do about it, and I would capture it this way. What is the organic unit of monetization on mobile that feels as natural as AdWords and AdSense felt on web search?
I think it's commerce. I want to ask for a beer here, and I want it to come to me.
Maybe that's right. I think that's an element. I think it's
a major element because if you really Uberize the world right now, Uber works on rides in San Francisco and New York and places like that. If you really Uberize everything in the world, that's a shitload of money, and that will enable Google to get to the next level. But you're right, knowing that and executing on it are two separate things.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think message delivery and relationships to brands is an unexplored territory.
Yeah. Doc Searles needs to come back on the show.
Yeah.
Well, you had to find him first. What is that, Uruguay now? I mean, every time his tweets are from all over the planet. I don't think he goes home anymore. Exactly. Okay, so has that quieted your head-shaking concerns, Kevin?
Yeah, to some extent. I think writing Google off when they are making themselves front and center in search for mobile is a mistake. I think they're very clear what they're doing there. What they're doing with maps and the iterations they've done on that and deploying that to the Apple platform also gives them a very nice hook for exactly that kind of, oh, I need to go and I need this thing now, commerce related stuff, and I think that will be very useful for them.
Yeah, that really hits it the nail on the head. The way you resolve what Robert's talking about, and what you're talking about, and what you're talking about, Keith, is that Mark Benioff just tweeted a little while ago a graphic which shows two lines, PCs going like this. Looks like it's a heart in fibrillation, basically, and then Google plus Apple going like that.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. This is that the market is, it's what Mary Meeker said. She put numbers on it was 65% to 35% in terms of desktop.
It's 25% now. Microsoft is down to 25%. That was a news story yesterday.
Yeah, and so the reality is not one or the other. It's not that either of them are going to lose. It's that they're both going to win.
Yeah. And by the way, I am not writing Google off. I am, however, saying that they have enormous challenges that there are no good answers to.
I agree with that. I think the next few quarters is going to be bumpy for Google. That there might they need to. They're going to have the same kinds of problems that Facebook has, but in a bigger way. And
getting across the trough from one model to the other is going to be difficult for them. But I don't think. I think as long as they wrap themselves tightly with Apple, they're going to do just fine. Okay. Anybody have anything else that they want to say before I wrap this? Keith?
No, just thank you for having me, and see you next week.
I hope so. Kevin?
I think, the other thing is I don't write off the Nexus 7. That is still going to be an interesting release.
Well, I think that they should be, bundling the two together, Chromecast and Nexus
that would make
7.
sense.
Yeah,
but the Nexus 7 will be a really nice first screen. And I just bought one during the show, as Keith pointed out. They're actually on sale now. So.
I actually went and bought one during the show as well.
Where?
Anyone want to buy two of the old model?
Yeah, I've got 3 of them, but I haven't used them. And I mean, at least I keep them powered so that I can not find them find my iPhone.
I got mine away because I knew something new was coming.
Well,
I've still got 2 of them. And
there's lots of schools, by the way, that
I've got a dead one.
Yeah, there's lots of schools that would love these kinds of
that's
tablets,
a good
even
idea.
last year's models.
All right. I want to thank Rackspace and Rob Legess particularly for bringing the show back to what is now not so much the air as the stream. I want to thank NewTek and hope that they were listening today and will get me some new toys. Get Tina some new toys.
Yeah.
And I want to thank our producer-director, Tina Chase Gillmor. And
how come we only see her hand?
Got to have some questions, right? There has to be mystery.
You realize this new trend called selfies. I think we should have Tina do a selfie every show.
I'm congenitally non-disposed to selfies.
She just photobombed Steve. There you go.
Twitter would not have existed for very long if selfies were the only thing that it was good for. What is a selfie anyway? It sounds like something that you'll get
it's
hair
when
on
you
your
shoot a
palms.
picture of yourself like this.
And there's a very broad range of it. If you go to Vine and you search #selfies, you'll find that they range from very cute pictures of babies all the way through to things we can't describe live.
Well, luckily we didn't talk about the royal baby, so that I could call the show Two Screens and a Baby. But
You could do that anyway. It's a good name.
no, it's not. I went with your name last week, but I had to edit it because I did a search on bacon and eggs, and what's bacon? Nobody cares. iBeacon, they immediately comes up with a bunch of stuff. So even though it sounded better, Beacon and Eggs, I used iBeacon and Eggs.
You consistently improve all my best ideas, Steve. What can I say?
The brown nose quotient. Free. They're going to replace the 3 months of Netflix with some brown nosing, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, all of you guys, for showing up. The chat room has been particularly interesting this time, and look forward to more of us using ChromeCast and Apple TV and AirPlay in conjunction with the show. Thanks to everybody who showed up. Oh, yes. Tina has been developing a Facebook site, facebook.com Gillmor Gang. Please join, or however that works. I'm not familiar with the Facebook that much.
Like it. Like it.
And we have Robert as a technical advisor, so
Yeah, go click like.
eventually.
Like it.
That's why you get the big bucks, Robert.
There you go.
Okay. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who shall remain nameless, who didn't. Bye.